Hello and welcome to another Sonic Talk special. Very pleased and honoured to be talking to Federico Vindver, who is based in LA, originally from Buenos Aires, Argentina. He has been working in sort of high-end production, Kanye, Coldplay, Christina Aguilera, Timberland, lots of really big names. He's currently in LA where he's taken a quick break between the sessions he's doing. So we're going to go and have a chat with him now. It's lovely to see you. I guess it's early in the morning where you are in LA, where you're working production. I mean, things have been crazy for you. I mean, we originally started this whole kind of dance when you had just finished the work on the Meghan Trainor Christmas album. So that, so back in December. So now, since then, I mean, you must have been crazy busy since then, because it's been, you must be very hot property. So are you busy? Are you finding time for life, or are you just kind of working your ass off?
No, I mean, it is a lot of work. I was actually having that conversation with my wife this morning, because I have, a little one. He's like, 17 months. And she's pregnant again, and she was like, "Oh my God, we gotta spend some more time together," because the last couple of weeks have been absolutely crazy for me, because I've been doing sessions twice a day. So I start early, around 1 p.m. I go out all the way up to 8, and then I go to another session that lasts up to 5 in the morning. So it's just been pretty crazy, but it's good. It's not gonna be like this forever, but sometimes you have these couple crazy weeks.
So you're actually are you playing? You're going to sessions and playing? I mean, what is that? Because I mean, you're listed as a producer, you're an instrumentalist, you're a co-writer. There's so many things that you strings to your bow. What's the bulk of your work at the moment?
Nowadays, it's more of a producer, really. I mean, I play if I have to play a part of something when we are writing, but it's just really producing and trying to create ideas with writers and artists, and the ideas can come up from a lot of different places. Sometimes it's me playing something on the guitar or a keyboard. Sometimes I bring pre-made, we call it samples, which is maybe compositions that are already sort of made, and we start building on that. It's kind of like how the industry's been working a lot lately. I will say in the last 2 years, where this sample-based thing is really a thing, and the way it works is, for example, I have other composers and producers, and they send me ideas that they make without any drums or anything. It might be a chord progression with an interesting sound or something, it's like a starter. Yeah. And then with that starter, basically we start writing and develop and adding to it, and next thing you know, you have a composition. But it's nice to have, I have folders of literally thousands of starters that people send me, so I can go to any session and think, okay, I'm working with this person today. Let me just grab a few, and I might grab 20 starters. I put them on a folder. I show up and play, a few of this. And when the artist is like, "Oh, I like that," then we start building on that, And sometimes the starter doesn't even make it to the end. It's just that. Sometimes it makes it to the end, and the other producer also gets production credit, which is a nice way to get other people involved without having to be in the session,
It's interesting. I mean, there are thousands of bedroom producers around the world who've just basically got loads of 2 or 4 or 8 bar riffs sitting there who will be rejoicing hearing you say that, because it kind of sounds like, those are sketches effectively, kind of like beats, I suppose is what you'd say, just kind of, that's really interesting. So what are you using when you're creating those things? Do you kind of tend to work within a piece of software? I mean, you say you pick up the guitar or the keyboard or stuff, where do you start?
I usually start in Ableton Live. That's what I use nowadays. I started back in the day in Logic, like a very, very early version of Logic. Actually, before that, I started on Acid Pro and then FL Studio when it was Fruity Loops. This is a very long time ago. And then I went to Logic and then Ableton in the last, I want to say, 3 years. And usually Ableton is great because I can just grab one of these loops if I'm working with a loop and put it in Ableton and start really mangling the time and the pitch and moving it around. And it's just almost completely different
So yeah, I was just going to say that Ableton has really started to move in, because originally, I mean, most production houses would have started in production would have started in Pro Tools. I mean, that's the language that a lot of people speak. But now live, I guess, is it because of the ease at which you can fluidly move the tempo and the key and just kind of very quickly work, particularly for writing and getting ideas going, right?
Yeah, I mean, and now Ableton just added this playlist for recording, and that's what makes it much easier, because before you will do the beat on Ableton and maybe track it in Pro Tools or in or Logic. Nowadays, you can actually track vocals in Ableton pretty good. So I actually like to stay in Ableton all the way through if I don't have to like use anything else. You know, I might only go to Pro Tools for mixing if I'm sending it to get mixed, you know. I create a Pro Tools session, but I try to stay in Ableton as much as possible.
Yeah. So we got straight into the tech there, but actually I was going to kind of ask you a little bit about your background. I mean, because you're from Buenos Aires in Argentina. What was that journey? Tell me the journey.
Yeah. Well, the journey started by me. I first moved to the US to pursue like a career in music at University of Miami. I got a scholarship there. I was a completely different major. I was just majoring in jazz piano, so nothing to do with production. But I slowly started playing in different groups and recording with them. And then slowly you're in the studio, you're looking at what the producer is doing, and then you're like, oh, I can do that too, you know, and then just jump into that world slowly. And actually, I started touring first with Lauryn Hill in the US, so it wasn't really like so much of Latin thing for me at the beginning. And started that, and then I started playing a lot of gospel gigs as well with like, you know, gospel churches and things of that nature, and R&B bands. So it was really more in the American side of things. And eventually, because I was in Miami, I went into a little bit more of Latin music. And through touring with a few artists, I met my wife, and she lived in LA. So I ended up moving in LA when we got married. And just being in LA, I just, you know, started working with different artists over there and producing different people. Then I met Timberland through a band that I was producing over there. And we started working together around 2017, and we just been working together ever since. So yeah, it's been a little bit all over the place, working in some country projects. I have worked with so many different people, you know, like you were doing one day a session with Kanye, and the next day you're working with, I don't know, Josh Groban, you know, just so random. But I love it. That's what I love about music. I just don't like to, I will get bored if I'm doing the same thing over and over.
Yeah, sure.
So I try to like challenge myself to see how much I can cover, sometimes more successful than other times. But, you know, at the end of the day, I think that's what makes you a rounder producer. And the people that I admire, such as Timbaland or Rick Rubin or, you know, Pharrell, like these people work in such a wide variety of music, you know, too. So that inspires me to try to like emulate that, you know, and just not feel pressure to do one thing.
I can't imagine that moment when you got to, I mean, Timberland for me is, you know, he's one of the kind of production gods. I mean, because he's so creative and so unique, his voice, you know, his voice. I mean, there was a whole period of time when there was those masterclasses ads all over YouTube where it would just show how he would start. I just think, wow, just to be a fly on the wall with her, you must have been in heaven. I mean, I'm guessing, you know, he must have taken a lot of stuff from you because you're a very well trained musician. You can play the chops, you know, with a gospel background. It must have been a real easy fit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we complement each other really well. And I think that's what, you know, one thing about Timbaland and a lot of these actually super amazing producers is that what they're really good at, besides them being amazing, is they're good at collaborating with people, you know, like they're not just one guy doing everything, you know, they have musicians, they have other producers, sound designers, just people with them to elevate their product, you know, and that's a lot of people impression that they just alone in a room making a beat, and that's not the way it is. You know, they always work with other people. So, and they always try to work with people that are going to complement their sound and bring something else that they don't have, you know. So in my case, I love sound design as well, and I'm always kind of providing soundscapes and things that are a little bit different as well. And many times it is just me playing a cool sound on a keyboard that starts a whole song, and then, you know, from there Tin might add some drums, do some things, then we take it, for post-production after the song is written, me and the other guys that work with Tim and start, messing with it and finish the whole production. So, the engineers put a little bit of their creativity as well. So everybody's kind of adding to the mix,
It's interesting you say that, because I mean, I guess I'm kind of still not old school, but my motion, this note, because I'm seeing a lot of production credits on specific tracks, like the track with the album we were talking about, which is the Meghan Trainor Christmas album, which must have been a real kind of like swerve ball, because that is a completely different sort of set of parameters. I mean, very, very pop, also kind of with a hint of cheese because it's Christmas stuff, but also very creative. But there's so many different producers involved. Is there who's in charge? Does there end up working that way? Do the record company kind of bring you all together and sort of say, yeah, this is the final product, or does it work kind of in a more organic way?
Well, in the case of her, it was more of like specific producer doing songs. So
yeah,
when I started working with her, they told me, well, they wanted this more orchestral approach to it and more Nat King Cole classic, lush strings and things like that. So my background in jazz was something that they wanted use, and she was a true fan of the work that I have done with Coldplay, Kanye West. So she really she was telling me specific songs that I worked on, saying I really like this thing and that other thing that you did, so that's the way that one worked out, versus other sessions, we are 7 people in the room.
It's interesting. I mean, you mentioned that kind of Nat King Cole. I've got a note here. It was the Christmas song. It says very classy and orchestral. And I was thinking Nat King Cole. It really had that vibe to it. So job done there, I would say. Do you get involved in the vocal production as well? Because, I mean, or with any vocalist, there's a real, almost like a brand identity to a singer. There's a certain thing, in the same way that when you get certain singers only use certain microphones. Is there a kind of vocal sound that you have to be within the parameters, or do you get the opportunity to really kind of go crazy and experiment?
Well, I mean, the way I see my approach to vocal production is usually it's a little bit less technical, because all I really care about is just the artist being able to sound great from an emotional standpoint, number one, and then them feeling the right emotion when they're recording. So I want them to feel comfortable. I want them to feel great. And I really don't care so much about the sound in itself, because let's say if you have a beautiful vocal booth with the best mic, and the guy or the girl has to be in it, and they're lonely in a vocal booth, feeling, isolated from everybody, almost like a bird that's being observed, or something like that. It's like, it's very hard for some people to be put in the spot like that. So a lot of times I'm more of a fan of having the singer sitting next to me, holding an SM7, and actually even not using headphones. A lot of times I just keep the speakers really soft, and I'll just let them sing without headphones, and just hearing the natural sound of their voice. Some other people, if they love to record with Auto-Tune and a bunch of effects, they will probably be on headphones. But I'm more of a fan of let's just stay all together and just, so I can tell you, hey, you should try this or try that. I try to keep it, then I feel you can have the most amazing vocal chain, and then the sound is incredible, but there's no emotion, or you can tell the person didn't sound it great. I'd rather have a mic that's not maybe the best mic, but what I got in it is crazy good, and then you can listen to some, when you listen to those 1930s blues records and stuff, and how bad they sound, but how good the music is, So that's kind of my approach,
It's really interesting because, I mean, American vocal production, particularly pop vocal production, is super pristine, super precise, yet to maintain and keep the emotion that was originally recorded in there without flattening out. Because I mean, everybody auto-tunes it. There's a certain expectation to the ear of the listener these days that it will be good. Sometimes people are disappointed when they hear live vocalists because they go, "Oh, that's not very in tune." I mean, it is. It's just not as precise as it could be made. So creating that, because a lot of the now vocal sounds are very heavily processed. So I mean, I guess that can happen afterwards, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can nowadays fix things pretty good as far as even if you have a vocal that doesn't sound excellent, just you can put a bunch of plugins and things and actually make it sound a lot better. My approach, honestly, I always had really good luck with, like I said, with something like an SM7. I feel it's just like a super great mic because it's cheap. You can take it anywhere you go. It's gonna sound good if I use, let's say, like an Apollo, and I connect it straight to my Apollo. Like the SM7 straight to the Apollo, I can tell you so many hit records have been done with that chain. I know a lot of the, Dua Lipa stuff, like Post, all these people, like they use that chain. Nowadays it just kind of sounds really good. Sometimes I be in an expensive studio, they have $50,000 47s with incredible neebs, and I'm like on my Apollo with an SM7, and and then we go to the expensive mic, and I mean, for some records, yeah, you can't deny that it's so much better, but sometimes it just works that way pretty good, and you get the right emotion and the right vibe, and it's all about having fun in the studio too. I think the best music is made when everything is very loose in some way, and we're feeling like we're playing, and just take out the whole sense of importance and how amazing this is, and just have a good time, and then suddenly you realize you have something special in your hands. It all goes together.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, after all, that's what, music is often bigger than the sum of the parts. It's just the thing that happens.
Yes.
So we've talked a lot about vocals. I'm just fascinated by American vocal production because I think it's an art that I just do not understand. I mean, I can't sing anyway. So let's rewind a little bit. This Christmas album that you did with Meghan, it basically coincided with the whole of the pandemic period. So, I mean, there must have been some logistical nightmares doing that. Were you able to work in person, or was there a lot of kind of remote working? And, so were you working at home or in studios?
We actually never met.
Right.
Me and Megan never really actually been on the same room ever. And the funny thing with this too, I never was in the room with anybody that made that record. So everything was made remotely. And it was just, Megan will call me and say, listen, I'm really inspired by this piece of music and the way it sounds, and I want to try something like that. So I will do a sketch, using a lot of samples and virtual instruments of what I thought it should sound like. And then I'll send to her, and then she will be, I love it. Let me just record my vocals on this and send them to you. And then she'll record vocals. And then she will give me a lot of harmonies, ad-libs, and she's like, you just pick whatever you want to use. And then from there, I will pick, everything sounded amazing. So I ended up using almost everything. So then I will take it, and I mixed it, and I did everything. Once we had something that we really like, I will call the musicians and send them MIDI files and audio files of everything I've done. With the horn guys, we had a horn section that is actually comprised only of 3 guys that they play every single instrument, and basically they use this thing called audio movers, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah, that's great. A great piece of technology.
Yeah, it's amazing. So basically, I was in the phone with them, and I had audio movers, and they will be recording part by part my MIDI thing that I did. They transcribed it and they wrote it down really, nicely, and then they will go to the booth, record, and then I'll be like, basically it's like I was in the studio with them, just hearing what they will do. And then if I hear something that was wrong, or maybe a note that I wanted to change, I'll be like, hey, you know what, maybe here just play a B flat instead of an A flat, or do this, do that. And with the strings, it was a similar process, working with David Rossi, which he's the string player with Coldplay.
I literally just interviewed him because I've worked with David Rossi. Amazing. I worked with David Rossi on Goldfrapp Records, so I've known him for 20 years. Wow,
that's crazy. Man, that's crazy because he always talk about those Goldfrapp records, and I always told him, like, man, I really love Goldfrapp and the stuff that he did with them. I was a fan of those records before I even met him for the first time, so it was amazing, to get to know him. But so he's a guy that I know him pretty well, and he knows me pretty well as far as how I arrange. So I can send in MIDI of everything I do, and he will execute it and come back sounding so good that honestly, like, there's no notes. I'm like, this is incredible. We're actually working on another record together right now as well. So then I sent the same thing with a drummer, same thing with bass player. So slowly, just replace every sound of my sketch with a real performer. And then at the end, when you hear it, it sounds pretty good. Honestly, I'm happy with it.
So do you think that because I've noticed this a lot, actually, the thing about the pandemic is it forces these new ways of working, and it kind of accelerates what was maybe already happening, because by requirement, it's like, well, we can't go there, so how are we going to fix this? So, I mean, that sounds like an exact example of what's begun. So do you think it's going to go back to how it was? I mean, because obviously being in the room with people is great, but if you had to fly halfway across the country to be in the studio, you might think, hey, maybe I'll just do it from my phone, like an audio movers or something.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's kind of a thing that you define in a case-by-case basis, because there's people that's amazing on Zooms and things of that nature, and you can really achieve incredible results that way. And there's other people that they just really don't like doing that,
Yeah.
And so you have to adapt to what the person, likes to do. In my case, I'm water, I move with the flow. Whatever the person wants to do, I adapt myself to do it. I always take it as a challenge too. Even if I don't like to do something specific, I kind of force myself to do it just to even learn something new. It's almost like going to the gym and picking up a heavier weight in some ways. So that's how I see it. I think people really wants to get back together in the room nowadays. I mean, it's starting already. I see myself like doing more and more sessions in person, and there's more like testing. We get tested before the session, and so far so good. Knock on wood, I've been good, and I never, gotten sick, or anybody that I know have gotten sick. But yeah, I mean, I'm good for both. Good for both, honestly.
We've talked a lot about around the technology. I mean, you mentioned the word synthesizer. I've got to know. I mean, what you play? I mean, I've noticed there was some stuff on the Kanye album. I mean, you were involved in a lot of that stuff. There was one track particularly which I thought that's got to be the most. Closed on Sunday. There's a big Moog bass, or sounds like
yeah.
Is it a Moog bass? I mean, and if so, what do you tend to reach for when you're going synth? I mean, do you have a collection? What do you use?
Yeah, I have a bunch of synths. I kind of collect synths in some way, so I probably have more than 40 something synths that usually they're all outside connected. A lot of them are in a closet, and I just pick what I need. In the case of Kanye, because I was working in this place that he had in Calabasas, he had like this house farm slash thing, and it wasn't really a studio. It was more like I was actually in an attic at that time when we did Close on Sunday, working with this other producer, Angel Lopez, which played the guitars on that as well. And I think what I have there, we had a Mellotron, and then I brought, just for space reasons, I had a Behringer Neutron, and I had a Behringer Model D. So yeah, those were really good. So we did the bass on the Behringer, the little one, that's like the Mini Moog one.
Yeah, the Poly D, or the Model D.
Yeah. The Model D, yeah, the Model D. And then the lead, there's a lead as well that happens in that part, and that was actually the Neutron, which I had recorded prior that day, and I had made myself kind of like a sample kit with it. Like sometimes I will sample, one note, like a one shot of a note that I really like, and I make it into a sound in Ableton. And that's where that one came from in particular. And like that Neutron one, man, I have to say, like, that has become, I mean, as cheap as it is one of my favorite synths of all time.
It really is a great synth. I mean, 3340 chips. I don't know how they get them to sound that good, but they do. I'm a big fan of the Neutron. It's a great sounding instrument.
Nice. Yeah, that one I feel like is such a crazy palette of sounds that you can do with it. And I mean, just the duophonic thing is good. Like it forces you to, you can do so much with two notes. Sometimes it just kind of makes you think differently. So for the Kanye, that was it. But yeah, I'm definitely into synths. Even with like when I work with the Coldplay guys, I will prepare so many sounds beforehand, and it makes it so much easier because I know Chris Martin, he likes to just sit down and play. So I felt like if I have all these inspiring sounds for him, he'll get inspired and do something amazing, which he's going to do it anyway. But I will have literally hundreds of sounds in Ableton and Logic that I will prepare beforehand. And then I'll be just like playing chords, and he's like, oh my God, that sound is crazy. Let me just go and play something. And then next thing you know, we had a song, And even to this day, he still uses some of those sounds too. So that was fun.
Right. I mean, that's collaborative stuff is obviously where it's at. I mean, I think that's the thing is getting into those situations as well. I mean, just being able to kind of work with those people. I mean, people like Kanye and Coldplay. I mean, we're talking some of the biggest names in the industry. Do you ever get to that point where it's like, oh my God, just pinch yourself and think, how am I going to handle this? This is really kind of actually a bit much.
You know what? I feel, yeah, you get to that point sometimes. I mean, I was actually talking with Angel Lopez, one of the guys that I work with the most, and a good friend of mine, amazing producer. We were just doing Justin Timberlake in Bahamas, and he's like, man, do you like just realize what we're doing? We're like in paradise working with our heroes, with Timbo and Justin. And I was like, man, it's true. Like, I just don't sit to really think about it that way enough. Like, things just go so quickly that you sometimes don't even get to enjoy it that much. And honestly, that's not a good thing. I want to be able to enjoy it more, but yeah, a lot of times you get very intimidated, but I actually get intimidated sometimes with new artists as well, to be honest with you, because, they come with like a different freshness and they don't understand a lot of things. So they might have an attitude that I'm like, oh, wow, what do I do? But so far so good. I've been able to navigate the waters pretty well and be good enough to like learn from these people. And the key to me is just like, you gotta help them, making their life easier. At the end of the day, that's really the job of the producer. It's not about me making the coolest thing ever. It's just more about me helping them to be as good as they can be. So that's why I feel an artist will call you back and want to work with you and enjoy you being around them, is because you make them feel good, you help them achieve what they want to achieve. And that's really not a technical, there's no technical thing on that. That's just something you go along and discover while working.
So do you think there's been a change of pace as well? Because, I mean, obviously, when people are touring and they're doing lots of promo, the amount of time you get with an artist is just, okay, we got 2 hours this afternoon, go write a hit record. I mean, it's like, well, how's that going to happen? I mean, the pressure in that situation. Has that room to breathe and kind of perhaps spend a bit more time and sit with things, is that something that's a byproduct of the world situation, do you think?
I wish we had more of that than we do sometimes, like you're right. I mean, so many times things have to go so quickly, and labels and managers and A&Rs, they think like, oh, well, yeah, there's a session on May 1st. So yeah, we're doing this song and we need you guys to do this single. And it's like, it's so calculated. Like, you can go on May 1st, your brain is going to create a hit. Like, it doesn't really work that way. I think it's a lot more of, just trial and error, and you need the time to be able to, develop that. And so many times the labels and the managers and the A&Rs, the non-music people, they don't really understand. They think, oh, you guys can get together and do it, and so that's actually
dig a hole. The hole needs digging there. It'll be done by 4 o'clock, right? Yeah.
Yeah. They think it's like one of those, but you get lucky with people like, like Justin Timberlake, like Kanye, like the Coldplays, even working with, I mean, a lot of different people that I have the pleasure to work with, work a little bit with Rosalia as well. And they take their time, man. Like, they just really, don't leave any stone unturned. They want to make sure everything is right, as combinations of sounds, combinations of lyrics. They really try it all. And that's when you're like, okay, we're making art, because I'm always super critical, like I'm sure you are as well. You always, it's never finished. You always want to keep working and see if you can make it better, so sometimes the industry doesn't work that way.
No, well, that's true. I mean, one thing I did discover was, rather than just sitting there for hours and hours and hours and hours, sometimes it's good just to go, I'm going to stop doing that and I'm going to go and move over here. And I guess with lots of things being in the box, if you're not feeling it for a particular groove or a particular sketch, you can very quickly flip to another one, and which might then inspire the work on the other one. So you can kind of move focus very easily. I mean, do you find you do that, or do you try and sit and finish it to a certain degree before you start moving elsewhere?
It's funny that you mentioned that because I tend to work that way too in the creation process. Like, for example, if I'm making tracks or beats or ideas, I usually spend 10 minutes on something and then I move on to the next and then move on to the next. And I might do like 15, 20 ideas in one day. And I don't really overwork them. I just kind of like work on them for 10, 15 minutes and then go to the next idea. And then what I do, I wait maybe for 1 or 2 days, and then I come back to those ideas later with a complete different ear where I almost forgot that I worked on those, and I get super more critical, and I can hear, okay, this one has definitely magic in it. This one I don't think is worth working on, and then out of 20 I might save 3 or 4, and then I work on those, and I spend a few hours on each trying to make sure that they're developed into something. Then when I take one of those ideas, let's say to a session, and we record and we write a song and we do vocals, then it goes to the next day after I do the vocals or 2 days after the vocals. I will open it. I keep working on it, like really finalizing everything. Then again, I put it aside maybe for a week or two, and then I reopen it and I go back at it again, but never for a very long time. And I try to take breaks in between things, and I also don't like over listen to things. Like if I make something, I'm not gonna be putting it in my phone and listening to it like 17 times a day. I just really don't listen to it at all. So when the next time I hear it, I can have that freshness. Because I noticed you start losing objectivity. That's the hardest thing about being a producer.
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, do you mix as well, or are you just trying to keep away from that? I mean, I'm just curious to know whether that's another one of your talents.
Yeah, I mean, I have done quite a bit of mixing, especially if I'm doing a project. I mean, this is the thing. When I work on something, I wanted to sound as mix, master, ready to go as possible from the inception. So I'm usually already starting putting sauce on everything, just making the vocals good, putting all the effects, putting everything on my master chain, so making it loud and trying to like master it and trying to mix it all from the beginning. And then when I keep working on this piece of music or a song, it is already all sauced up, and the whatever bounce people gets is usually already loud and clear and as mixed as I can. And I really take a lot of care into doing that. Then if by the end of the whole thing I feel that we are sounding really good and the label and the artist and everybody loves it, it might be released with my mix and my master too a few times. If we feel that somebody else can really put better ideas in it in the mixing stages, then we send it to get mixed and master. But it's been a bunch of times that we send it to get mixed and they were like, no, the other mix that we had was better.
It's got the vibe.
Let's just stay with it.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, that's the magic.
Yeah, some mixers actually are really good at that. Nowadays, I think a lot of new mixers, they understand that it's not about mixing the song. It's about taking something that's already mixed and making sure that all the little things that could be better are better without losing the essence of it. So, that's, I think in today's day and age, that's what happens more and more,
It's curious. So one thing that you said, talking about things being loud and clear, I mean, we've been through that whole kind of sausage waveform of everything. And what's interesting, like producers like Timberland and all the other guys and stuff that I've heard that you do, there's much more room in the mix. There's not like this wall of sound. There's the space. So that means that the dynamics kind of are there. I mean, as a sort of trained in jazz, dynamics are important. But if you've got something that's very full and hasn't got anywhere to go, it's much harder to get that sense of dynamic. Do you think that's maybe the way that modern production has happened is almost subconsciously created the space that it was lacking in, maybe some of the stuff in the late 90s and early 20th century stuff?
Yeah, I agree with that a lot because I feel nowadays we're like in a more minimalistic phase of music. I think we had those days of the big days of when Lady Gaga just came and Dr. Luke and all these super mega layer big things in your face with a bunch of sounds. And nowadays, I think we're actually in the opposite. We're like in the most minimal. What can I do with two sounds that is going to sound amazing and it's going to sound huge? And one thing that I learned also working with Kanye, which he pretty much also always worked that way, but I think he really learned a lot from Rick Rubin as well. Uh, Kanye used to have this thing where like you can never have more than 4 sounds at the same time, including my voice. So that made it where you have that challenge. Well, if I have kick, snare, and vocal, then I really only have one sound left to use, So I better use that right. And maybe you can go up to 5, but it's usually that. And when you think about it, besides having, when you think kick, snare, bass line, and another sound, that's really all you need. And then you start thinking, Led Zeppelin, the early Beatles, like blues,
Yeah.
all these Hendrix. It's just 3 things, like just the drums, bass, and guitar, and the vocal, and you don't really need anything else. So I feel part of like, with mixing and that, in that sense, if you really are only using a kick and a snare and a sound, those 3 elements have to be so great. Like you can't get away with a bad snare drum if you are, trying to make it so minimal,
Yeah.
You can't get away with an uninteresting, bass sound, or if you are only using bass and no harmonic instruments whatsoever. So I think you have to find the best sounds. And I remember when I worked with Coldplay, they have this thing with Brian Eno that he wrote all these commandments for them, and one of them was like, cook like an Italian, just few ingredients, fast in the kitchen, get it out, and quality ingredients. You making certain foods is like, sometimes you just have, when you go to Italy, you just have the best olive oil and the best, tomatoes and the best garlic. How you don't need much more than that,
Right.
then you come here and like we have not the best quality of products, and to make a good tasting sauce, you got to put so much to it. So I try to, when you work that way, then the mix is so much easier, because then it becomes a matter of like leveling things right, but then it's just mix, and you can get actually way louder by using less elements too,
Yeah.
if you have so many things, your master starts getting cramped. But if you just have a few elements, you can really like even distort your master, and clip it real hard, and you're still sounding pretty good.
That's really interesting. I mean, I think one of the things that I just like to make a case for more bass lines, though, because I feel that we haven't had a really many classic bass lines in the last 5 or 10 years, and I think maybe we need to get some of those
Might be
back
right.
because I feel I just like to put one in there for the bass line. Do you try and slip them in there where you can, or is the bass line almost like
Yes.
a dirty word now?
No. I mean, it's not. I mean, I think like it's funny because Timbo, like he's also all about the bass line too. So with guys like that, that's something that you got to try to pay attention to. And he's very critical of the bass too. So it's hard to get him to like something when it comes to bass, because he knows what he wants and he's a master at it. So, but yeah, I'm with you. It's all
Yeah.
about the bass line, man.
Well, I totally agree. And it's such a challenge, isn't it? Because we like to feel the energy of that super low, but we've still got to mix it so that you can hear that or aware of it on your phone. I mean, that's just sonically, it's
Yeah.
challenging, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I was actually working in a song, I think it was 2 days ago, where we were working in this beautiful studio with this East-West speakers with incredible subs, and I had this like super low kick drum, and it was like, man, this is feeling so great. And it was really only kick. That was the only percussive element on the song, and it was great. And then I was like, man, I have the suspicion that this is not going to translate good to a smaller speaker, but we were so into the big speakers, we kind of didn't really think about it. And then we're like, okay, let's just put it on the laptop and see if the laptop can handle it. Like it was, suddenly there was no kick. We're like, oh man, back to square one. But it happens that way sometimes. It's good to have those references of having different set of speakers that you can reference. And nowadays, like the little AirPods or your laptop speakers, they are becoming such an important tool. Like I sometimes finish mixes on these guys, because if they don't sound good on this, then they're not gonna be good, because most people is gonna be listening to that. So as good as they have to sound on my ATCs, they gotta sound on these ones as well. You know what I mean?
I'm glad to hear you're using British speakers there, ATCs, some of my favorite
Yes.
speakers. What model have you got?
The best.
Yeah.
I'm using actually the 25s right now, the SCM 25s. But I used to own. I have a studio in Miami back in the day, which I sold, where I have the 300s. That's like the top of the line model.
Yeah.
And man, those were like so beautiful, like incredible. My favorite speakers for sure.
Yeah, just you can hear everything. So, Federico, what's next for you then? I mean, you know, you're busy. There's things are looking up. We feel like maybe the roots of kind of things getting a little better in the world. What are you hoping to happen? Because I mean, are you still playing live? I mean, is that something you want to get back into, or I guess with a family, touring's
not really, man. No, I mean, I haven't played live in probably like 6 years,
Right.
you know, where I stopped touring. I was lucky enough to like tour with my wife for a minute, because she was a dancer at this tour that I was doing. But, you know, now we have kids and everything. So I'm not really trying to go on the road again. And I enjoy the studio so much. But as far as, you know, the future for me, you know, I just want to keep working with a lot of talented people. I'm right now doing a few pretty interesting projects, like the Justin Timberlake being one of the most exciting ones for me, because I was such a fan of what Tim and Justin did for many years, a big influence in me, and Denja and all these producers that work with Justin, and working with them is just a dream come true. Also working Christina Aguilera, she's doing a new album right now. Be very involved with that one. Pretty much working on doing the whole record with her. Also working with Rosalia a little bit. We've been working with this rapper Jack Harlow. Working on this other artist, Nati Peluso, new artist from Latin America. Man, there's so many projects. I honestly like forget. It's funny because then I hang up with you, and I'm gonna be like, oh my god, I didn't mention this thing. But yeah, there's always projects, you know, coming in now. It's like, and that makes it fun for me because there's so many songs at the same time happening that you know, I don't get bored. You know, oh, I'm working on the same song, but it also gives me room to breathe and to you know, say I've been working today. You know, yesterday I was working on Christina, and then tomorrow, and I work with Jesse Reyes, another artist, the day before. So you know, then I can breathe. And now when I hear that other song that I did 2 days ago, I already forgot everything about it because I did so much in 2 days that, you know, now it's like a new piece of music. I can really judge it for what it is. I can really attack all the areas that need work. So,
yeah,
you know.
Variety. Federico, thank you so much for talking to us. It's been absolutely brilliant. I much appreciate it.
Man, my pleasure. I gotta say, I'm a huge fan of you and what you do. It's one of my hobbies when I have some time is watching every single video you put out, and I'm a huge fan actually of your playing as well and all the pieces that you put together. So if you ever have something you want to send my way, man, please. It might become a big song for somebody one day.
Wow, I am actually blushing. That's very kind of you to say so.